Yes, I think let's jump into it. Let's just jump into it. So, July is quite a big month, not only just for us as South Africans, but also for the continent and the globe at large, with it being on the 18th of July. National Nelson Mandela Day. So this past Saturday, let's start there and just set the stage and set the tone. You guys started with your activations around Nelson Mandela Month. Can you take us through some of the activations, how you started and how you launched on Saturday the 18th, and then take us through to what's going to be coming forward?
Yes, absolutely. So all of July, the city of Joburg, not limited, of course, to Johannesburg City Parks and Zoo, we all have adopted Mandela Month, which means that we get to celebrate throughout the month. And of course, our reach is so much more greater. We commenced the month at the Intercosa Park in Soweto. That's the site where Madiba himself planted a tree in 2007 to mark his 90th birthday and Arbor Month. And he was very, very clear during that unveiling ceremony where he said, it's all in our hands. We have the responsibility to manage the environment, to take care of the environment. And of course, the challenge was out that we continue to accelerate our tree planting program as part of that. So we commenced that, celebrated his birthday with a group of children from the local creche, together with a senior citizens group. And that was on Thursday. We moved on Friday, commenced a cleaning campaign in one of the parks. And then Saturday, we did an amazing, incredible alien invasive plant eradication program together with Curo at the Joburg Zoo. And on Sunday, we had a 6.7 kilometer race at the Joburg Zoo. Today, we cleaned up the Olifants Place Cemetery. And we've got a series of events all building up to the 23rd, where we're going to be unveiling a revamped and upgraded park. So for us, it's going to be a busy month. It's all about going the extra mile. And we're seeing so much support, so many communities that have come out, that have initiated their own campaigns, and we're seeing cleaning campaigns, litter picking, tree planting, reclaiming our neighborhoods, especially those illegal dumping spots and so on. And we're saying it's all doable. It just takes that little extra added support from residents, from communities, from resident associations. And we're finding that we can really, really turn around our cities, especially our urban spaces.
The voice there, Jenny Moodley. We are in conversation with her on our Soul stage, and she is from the Johannesburg City Parks and Zoo. Now, Jenny, listening to you speaking, you take me back, because I feel it was such a big culture for us when we are in schools. You even mentioning, the partnership with Curo, and the kids in kindergarten. But it takes me back to that time where that's where we were most active, and as adults, it seems that everything else gets in the way, that we don't take care of those little things that actually do go a long way. So I'm noting that this year's theme is all about turning that 67 minutes into a lasting legacy. Now let's talk to, how do these volunteer projects really reflect that idea?
Yes. So what happens in the build-up to the month is we issue a call out to residents to say, initiate these campaigns where you need support, where you need trees and so on, especially in our areas where we're finding that we still need to bridge that greening disparity, where we don't have adequate tree cover. So in terms of those communities, we distribute trees in those areas. But having said that, there are schools like your Jeppy girls, Jeppy boys. We've seen schools also in your more affluent northern suburbs that have gone the extra mile in terms of partnering with schools in Alex, in Soweto, so in your more indigent areas, in your more developing areas. And that's been incredible and amazing. So we say to schools, as part of your environmental education curriculum, adopt these spaces. Now, I want to put out there, because there's always this assumption that the city needs residents to do the work that we officials or employees get paid to do. And I want to say that's absolutely not the point. Our aim is to forge the civic ownership, to to build and to create a sense of ownership and pride in terms of open spaces, in terms of public infrastructure, and so on. So we're finding more and more that there's a number of volunteers, more affluent groups with the resources and so on, that really want to be part of this whole revival of our inner cities, particularly. And we've invited these groups, they've come along, there's so much enthusiasm, they come along with their pruners, their gloves, all togged up, ready to start the cutting of grass and so on. And it's interesting to see how these youth are so energetic. But as part of that whole activation, we ensure that we share the environmental benefits. For example, in terms of the Joburg Zoo, where we did the invasive plant eradication, we taught these learners what's a bugweed, so to spot the invasive plants, to eradicate it. Why do we do what we do? And so that whole education process is one cycle in terms of sharing that information and getting residents and our youth to identify some of these plant materials that are not helpful to the environment. So, and similarly, when we do the cleanup campaigns, the big message here is, when you throw that can out the window or that piece of paper, it's got such far-reaching implications. It can go into the stormwater, it causes flash flooding. We've had fatalities due to rivers and river bodies and dams and so on being overwhelmed with litter and other home or domestic waste. So for us, it's all about the education more than anything else. And Mandela Month is largely about that. You know, humans are essentially good, and we must work from that premise that if we continue with the positive reinforcement, we're able to change those habits, change the negativity around litter and illegal dumping and so on. And we can really reclaim our inner cities, our cities as a whole. So we use the month largely as part of an education month, and to work with our youth, to work with resident associations, to work with councillors, and just reclaim these spaces.
Oh, that is a fantastic work. I mean, I think definitely a round of applause in our various parts across the continent for the work that you've been doing and you've done so far. And of course, this campaign continues with many more activations. I see you have got a chock-a-blocked calendar with South Hill still to come. You've got Ivory Park, and there's so much more. Can you just briefly take us through, you know, what some of those activations are going to be? Of course, you did mention that it's all leading up to that unveiling of the remodeled and re-established and re-envisioned, of course, park that you mentioned.
Yes, quite right. So we will start lobbying. We've already commenced the lobbying, but we will invite and host groups of schools adjacent to these facilities. We will make sure that we have our environmental education team, and they will, of course, do an activation with the learners. And it could be as basic as why you should not litter, how to plant a tree, because there is the science behind planting a tree, and we do that. We also are encouraging youth to start their little gardens, their food gardens. We know that food security is a big issue on our continent, and it's extremely important to start inculcating or educating our youth to say you can start a garden even if you live in a multi-story block of flats or apartments. We're saying you need a small space, you can start these vertical gardens. So we would do all those sort of environmental education activations during the build-up to the actual formal event. During the event, we might have the mayor, we have our member of the mayoral committee. This weekend, we had the president as part of the inner city as well doing the walk. And so there's going to be high level participation. We get the celebrities just to ensure that we have the endorsements from everybody that basically says we have the power to do it. The power is in all our hands, and that nothing is not possible. And I think that's the message we want to say. So as part of the activations, we will work throughout the city in the various regions, making sure that environmental education is recognized and reinforced. We would also make sure that in terms of the actual distribution, that where possible we will distribute fruit trees. We're finding that it's extremely important to say to our residents that we have the space within your private homes.
Yes.
Space is limited when it comes to public spaces. We're finding that infrastructure like your fiber, uh, your electrical infrastructure, your waterworks, and so on. And so we share that space, and it's very, very limited. And so our call remains in terms of reaching out to our residents to say, let's plant those trees, let's enhance the environment. It's all very doable, and we will work with you. So we do a lot of that in terms of the build-up. We also make sure that we, as you can see with yourselves, we work with the media as part of advocating for a more healthy environment, for a more healthy lifestyle as well. We want people to come out in their numbers, use these spaces. We want healthy living citizens. We want healthy children. We want them away from the video games and the cell
outside.
phones. So we want them outside.
Yes, we want
and I
them
think that's
outside.
exactly the call.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes, African Diaries right here on Channel Africa. Right after this, we'll be back with Jenny Moodley as we continue with our Soul Stage. This is Channel Africa, the African perspective, and you are currently locked into African Diaries with Khanya Sosibo in for Titch Mataz this Monday evening. We are in conversation with Jenny Moodley, who is the spokesperson of the Johannesburg City Parks and Zoo, and that is known as JCPZ. We're talking to her about the activations around Nelson Mandela Month, and they've already been doing so much work, getting on the ground since last Thursday, just really going through and moving through the city and surrounding areas with the various activations. And the one thing that she said is that, you know, she wants everybody to get off those phones, get off those screens, get outside, get planting, get cleaning, and just creating a better environment for not just yourselves, but for all of us as communities, as families, as well as a society. Jenny, just to pick up from where we left off, you know, we're speaking about, you know, the getting involved of residents in these campaigns, bringing aboard, of course, obviously the communities that live within these spaces. For anybody out there who's listening to us right now and saying, you know what, I'm curious about this, I'd like to jump on board, you know, this is something, I've green fingers, I've been looking for this opportunity. Do they need to register in advance? What is the process for people to get on board? And perhaps people who don't even live within those communities, but who say, I'm putting my hand up and I'd like to help.
Absolutely. We're saying in every part of the continent, in any part of the world, we basically have opportunities to volunteer. Joburg City Parks and Zoo has a very extensive volunteer program. This is, of course, there's no compensation in terms of it, but there's recognition. And what we're finding is that we're involving schools, we're involving the various resident associations and friends of parks. So you have the Friends of Zule, the Friends of Kloofendal, Friends of Klip Riversberg Nature Reserve. We have the Friends of the Wild. So we invite these groups or these individuals. They then sign an indemnity. And as part of that indemnity, we then alert them to activations. So we would have a program where we would say, we're going into the wilds to remove alien invasive bugweed. And of course, this would be on this particular date. You are hereby invited to join. And we would get a number of responses in terms of that. So we're saying contact your local parks entities. In the case of Joburg City Parks and Zoo, certainly look us up. We jhbcityparksandzoo.com, and we have a volunteer program. You basically complete those forms, sign those indemnities, and we're good to go. And we're saying this is such an important part of actually building healthy citizens. We find that sometimes we coming across children would never ever planted a tree or even felt the lawn or touched the soil.
Yeah.
And we know how this is not just personally very rewarding, but it's also very healthy in terms of building healthy citizenry. So for us, it's just getting those kids outdoors, getting them to walk bare feet, getting them to make sure that they understand that you cannot litter, that their bins provided, this is where you place that litter. And it starts at a very, very young age. Believe it or not, we're finding that the kids that we work with take home these messages to the adults. So they become the educators at home. And that's very interesting. We saw this with the Greening Soweto project as well, where we worked initially with the schools, and that became a catalyst for civic pride, civic ownership. We did the positive reinforcement in terms of the messaging. We started off with places like Tukosa Park, your Dlamini Park, and so on. And as we continued to roll out these parks, we found that the adjacent homeowners started to pretty up their gardens. They started to plant trees. That old car that was sitting in the yard suddenly got towed away. And then we saw the renovations, homes becoming double-story homes and so on. And so this is such a vital, not just an environmental benefit in terms of getting involved with the environment, but also in terms of economic benefits, in terms of social benefits, and of course in terms of health benefits. So for us, it's how do we bring up children that are more eco-conscious, that are more involved in their communities, and that really, really want to make a difference. And we know that once there's this appetite to get involved, it never stops. The whole family gets involved. We're seeing this with the cleanup campaigns, and we've got some amazing initiatives where you could come into the zoo at no cost when it comes to incentivizing some of the young volunteers when they do participate.
Yeah, definitely contagious in a positive way. The voice there of Jenny Moodley. And we're still talking all things activations around Nelson Mandela, International Nelson Mandela Day and Month, as they would have it with their campaigns. Now, Jenny, let's speak about, the practicality of it. And we know we live now in an era where you are born on the 18th of July. And by the time you go for a job interview, you need to have, 100 years worth of experience. So what practical conservation skills do these young volunteers, and any volunteer for that matter, who join part of these campaigns and of course projects that take place, what do they gain from a practical perspective?
Yes, so very, very important question. So in terms of that, we're finding that learners, as part of the environmental education, need to spend that many hours volunteering. And sometimes it could be at the zoo, it could be in your local park, it could be at a local creche, an orphanage, and so on. And we then at Joburg City Parks and Zoo host a number of learners. As part of that, they get a certificate of participation. And in terms of that, they put that into their CVs when they are applying to tertiary institutions as part of their tertiary studies. And we know that many learners have gone on to be accepted at medical schools and so on, based on their applications and their volunteer programs that they participated in. So it's a very, very important role in terms of strengthening your CVs. We're also finding that with the youth, we have a number of programs. For example, at the Joburg Zoo, we have Adopt an Animal or Adopt a Park when it comes to the parks. Mm-hmm. And there, once again, they get a little intro package. They get access into the zoo for that number of days. They then join a kiddies group or a youth group when it comes to not just participating in cleanups at the zoo, but getting to know the animals and their habits and so on. So very informative and again, our way of building eco-conscious children. And then, of course, there's the youth, which is your under 35. We have what we call the Expanded Public Works Program, where the youth get paid just under 200 rands a day, and they could participate in a number of initiatives. So we would identify, for example, in Drisik, where we're unveiling the park, we would then identify youth and possibly youth entrepreneurs, your local pavers, your plumbers, and so on, that could come in and work in the construction of that park, they would be compensated. And in terms of that, we then are saying, this is your park. Your hands worked here. You made the difference. Now you need to take care of that park. And we're finding there's a strong level of ownership and pride through those initiatives. And there's a number of other initiatives where we go to schools to you. We take the zoo to these schools. We teach these learners about not being afraid of those slithery friends, your snakes and so on, and
Hi,
the
Jenny.
reptiles. I know. I've seen some journalists wrap some of those snakes around their necks, and I thought, So yeah, so it's interesting to see how you can overcome your fear, and also to learn that the snake is more afraid of you than of you of the
I hear
snake.
you. I hear that all the time, Jenny.
Well, visit the zoo, and I can tell you, you can overcome some of those fears. So we share some of those learnings. So if you do find one of these slithery friends, let us know, and we want to rescue them. We don't want you to hurt them. So we do those sort of activations when it comes to schools. It's all part of a very, very extensive environmental program. The important thing is we celebrate all these days, from your World Environment Month all the way to Arbor Month, to observing, World Elephant Day, World Rhino Day, and so on. And and I'm finding that at one point we were talking to a particular group of people, and we found that we weren't making any inroads into communities that weren't really getting involved in the environment. And now that we have a very detailed and comprehensive environmental education program, where we're going into your rural areas, your peri-urban areas, where we're going into these schools that are public schools and so on, we're finding that there's a shift in mindset, that lots of children want to volunteer. We're seeing these children coming from your developing suburbs. And this is so exciting for some of us and so rewarding, because this is the mindset change that we want to make. We know when it comes to the zoo, there's been a lot of debate and discussion. Are zoos relevant in this day and age? And we're saying now more than ever, we need those zoos. There's poaching, there's eradication of spaces, free roaming spaces. We're also finding that most of the people that we engaging with, especially your senior citizens, which we host free during the month of October, we're finding that so many of them had never seen an elephant or a lion in their lifetime.
Sure, yeah.
And we're saying every African child has a right, it's their birthright, to see an elephant, to hear the trumpeting of an elephant, to hear the roar of a lion. And so for us, these little spaces must open doors. It must act as a window to a world view, to getting our children to understand what the environment is about, and that every action, from the time you get up in that morning all the way to the time you fall asleep on that pillow, that you are literally impacting on the environment. And that's the sort of education we want to foster through your Mandela Days, through your World Environment Days, through your Arbor Months. That's what we want to say to the youth of our continent.
Oh, thank you so much, Jenny. That was the voice there of Jenny Moodley. She's also the voice behind Johannesburg City Parks and Zoo, JCPZ, PZ rather. And she's talking all things about taking care of our environment. I think that, that parting shot of from the moment you wake up and you step out, even in how you operate within your home, every single action that you take will have an effect on your environment in one way or another until you come home. So make sure that you are taking very careful and very responsible and caring, of course, activities and steps throughout the day. That's how we wrap up our Soul State right here on African Diaries on Channel Africa.